If you are a Canon M6 Mark II owner, if you already have the camera and you are happy with it and you're outside of your return date, I would probably recommend that you do not watch this video. A lot of YouTubers know that people come to YouTube looking for, affirmation to feel good about the camera that they purchased. That's not what this video is about. If you are in the market for a Canon M6 Mark II and you want to know, some of the strengths and weaknesses, you've come to the right place. There are some nice aspects of the camera. I think the grip is more than sufficient for a mirrorless camera. It's probably one of the beefier grips that I've seen. The touchscreen on all Canon cameras recently have been outstanding. I think the screen is amazing. We have our Q menu and we can touch and change the controls. So we have more than one option. The dual pixel autofocus for video and even for the sports shooting, so far it seems to be really nice, really good and accurate. But those features in and of themselves, they are not enough to make up for what would be a constant pain in the butt. If you look on YouTube, there's going to be tons of positive reviews about the camera. If you look at the date of when those reviews were published, you're going to see that most of them were published on August 27th or 28th, timed specifically with the announcement of the camera and linked to pre-orders. There's something that's going on. It has definitely changed the photography community on YouTube, and these are these press events where camera companies are inviting YouTubers to try out the new cameras before they're announced. And what's really going on is these are mostly promotional campaigns. You're going to see lots of videos where there's no disclosure about the relationship, mostly positive, reviews and comments. And the purpose of it is to flood the market with mostly positive reviews before people like me get the camera and can test them out. So I don't go to those press events, and I will never go to a paid press event where I'm hotel or flight is covered. But I'm going to start putting this logo on the bottom so this is 100% organic. I've paid for this camera with my own money, and I want to point out some serious issues and flaws that the M6 Mark II has. I am even going to put it on a list of cameras that I do not endorse. I'm actually telling you, as if you were my best friend, do not buy this camera. It has some redeeming qualities. There are some really nice things about it. Every camera has strengths and weaknesses, and if those strengths aren't greater than the weaknesses, don't buy it. So when we're talking about the ergonomics and the ease of use, usability is how easy it is to use. And what I'm seeing here is there's lots of reasons to trip over yourself. The M6 Mark II, you can get something called the DC2. It's an electronic viewfinder that slides onto the top of the hot shoe mount. So if you expect to use that DC2 and you're looking through the viewfinder without a joystick, you're now part of the left eye problem club. So if you're a left-eyed shooter, 33%, 33 to 35% of you are left-eyed shooters, and you're looking through that viewfinder, Canon wants us to change the focus points using this touchpad. What's going to happen is your nose is going to touch this corner here, and your focusing squares are constantly going to be changed. And we're also looking at, the value of what you're getting. The cost of the camera is $850 without a lens at the time of this recording. You can buy it with the viewfinder and a kit lens for about $1,100. But at that point, you are at, like a Canon 90D, which is a good camera. It has some problems, but I think that is worth the value. And the second big issue is that when you flip this monitor up, which is made for vlogging, we've seen this on the Sony a6400, it is right behind the hot shoe, which is where we want to put an external microphone. So designed for vloggers, you flip this up, now the microphone is directly in front of the monitor, and you're blocking your own. This is what I mean by tripping over yourself. Now, surely there will be some adapters and things that will allow you to move the microphone off to the side or maybe over here. You're buying this camera to be very small and lightweight, do it all. It's not designed for it because now it's bigger. You have to get an extra rig. Now it's heavier. And it's not this compact solution unless you want to record without a microphone. The new control wheel with the function dial in here is great. It introduces a lot of options in terms of coming in and changing certain settings. But as we saw on the EOS R, this introduces a number of extra button presses. I think it's easier to have these direct buttons where you can just push. I like that, flash on off, and a lot of these are customizables. We see this manual focus to autofocus switch that we've seen on Sony cameras. I like stuff like this, especially when we don't have lens switches on the camera itself. Another problem is the location of the shoe mount for the ball head it blocks the battery in the compact flash card compartment. So if you want to change your battery or change your card, if you have it on a tripod, you have to take it off the tripod, you have to remove the shoe and then change it. We've seen it on like the Fuji X-T30 and some other mirrorless cameras. It's a pain in the butt. I'm not a huge fan of it. I do like the double controls. So when we're in manual mode, we got our shutter speed control. We have our aperture control. That's great. That's wonderful. We can use our MFN button to change ISO. That's a very nice, natural way to shoot. Fantastic. But when you look at the mode dial, which should be an analog mode dial, I think this is the way to go than having like a digital mode dial. We have to flip through 3 buttons to get to video mode. That may not be a big deal to some people. It is to me when I do a lot of video shooting. It's just extra button presses. Some people will point out, well, you can record video from the back monitor here. Yeah, awesome, right? So recording video, but if you want to shoot 4K, you literally have to come over to the video mode to shoot 4K. We have some 60 frames per second. We have a 120 frames per second high frame rate. But something else that I noticed is that it's lacking the cropped mode that we saw on the Canon 90D, and that crop mode is cleaner and sharper. I believe that this is happening with some pixel binning or some line skipping, just looking at the quality of it. The crop mode tends to overheat a little bit in the 90D, but it's a lot cleaner and a lot sharper, in my opinion. There's only a handful of EF-M mount lenses. There's just a few of them. You can obviously easily adapt EF lenses if you buy the adapter, and my experience in the past has been like the M50, for example. It works great when you adapt over. This is the rub, is the M50. I have seen that available for less than $600, brand new. I've seen some used on eBay for $400. We're looking at half the price of the M6 Mark II. It includes an EVF. It's an extra $150 to $200, depending on how you get that EVF. And the monitor flips out to the left side. I love the M50. I think the M50 has its problems, but it's redeemable. And strangely, the M50 will shoot 24 4K, but not 30. So Canon is playing games with us, and I'm sick of it. They're always doing these things where they're taking out a feature, or they'll take away like dual pixel autofocus for 4K and things of that nature. So when we're talking about the things that I like about the M6 Mark II, I think the image quality is nice. I'm liking the images coming out. Another question I like to ask myself about a camera is, what can this camera do that no other camera can do, and at what cost? There are a couple things. When we're talking about the high speed burst, 14 frames per second with continuous autofocus on a Canon mirrorless camera, that's really good. Okay, that's super amazing. But I have put a very fast memory card in here. SanDisk, it's 300 megabytes per second. UHS 2, it's super fast. High speed burst, I want you to watch what happens here in the buffer. And we're just gonna go with a smooth L JPEG. So here's your 14 frames per second. I'm holding it down. So what's happening is you basically have about 3 seconds of burst if you're shooting at that 14 frames per second. Look at the buffer speed. It takes a bit of time for that buffer to clear. So what I feel is like Canon put a really high performance frames per second, but the buffer doesn't clear fast enough for you to really maximize this. I know there's some people who will disagree with me on that. Second feature they talk about that is, something it can do that no other camera can do is the raw burst mode. So when we come in here and we turn the raw burst mode to enable, there's also a pre-shooting feature that is the cyclical buffer for every half second. So it basically means as soon as you push that shutter button halfway down, it starts recording. And then when you push it down all the way, it's going to capture what was ever in the buffer. So I want to demonstrate something about this. So if you go to disable and we're in a regular shooting mode, look at the framing of this focus chart I have up. When you come in and you enable this, oh, the framing's changed. And the reason is because this is not a full resolution RAW. This is an 18 megapixels. So you're not getting those full 32 megapixels at that 30 frames per second. You're getting 18 megapixels. And this is an electronic mode. So if you're shooting in LED lights, for example, which I am, you can get banding, If you're panning for a moving subject, you can get the jello effect. So it's a nice idea, but is it enough to justify that extra cost? So I want to demonstrate this for you. Get this icon up here. So watch what happens. Here's you get a buffer indicator here. It's kind of interesting, right? It's flashing. It's telling us we're going to get 40 frames. What, 30 frames per second? It's not going to last very long. Watch. Holding it down, and that was it. Pre-buffering, pushing down all the way. Buffer fills up, and now it goes down. So it's literally like maybe 2 seconds tops. Now, the interesting thing about this is it creates a database, some kind of file format, that when you want those JPEG or those raw images, you have to come into the file, which is designated with this, and then scroll through the image that you want, come up here and hit the set button, and then decide to extract it as either a JPEG or a RAW. So when you're shooting, we're not getting the raw images on the card. They are written somewhere that you can't see, and then you have to export them one at a time. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about tripping over yourself too much. We can extract it as a JPEG, save a new file. When I take the memory card out and put it into my computer, and then I put it back into the camera, and I come in to turn this feature on or off, it locks me out of the camera for 20 or 30 seconds. So what I'm basically saying is it's a nice idea, but it just doesn't have the firepower to support the new features it has. 14 frames per second, should have a deeper buffer. 30 frames per second RAW, it's 18 megapixel RAW, and it's not much. You know, if you're a vlogger, you want to vlog with your microphone blocking your monitor the whole time. If you're a left-eyed shooter for sport shooting and you're using that EVF, do you want to have the left eye problem? It's just too many problems for spending $850 for just the camera. If you're interested in a mirrorless Canon camera, I think the M50 is a better value. I've seen it for hundreds of dollars less. It comes with an EVF. It'll shoot 24 frames per second. It won't shoot 30 frames per second at 4K. But overall, I think the Canon 90D or the Canon M50 is a better value for your money. Yeah, I'm putting the M6 Mark II on the list of the cameras I would not recommend. And I'm probably not even going to make a tutorial on how to use it because I don't want that to be viewed as an endorsement for the camera. I'm sending this one back. I think if the Canon M6 Mark II was probably in the $500 range, it would probably be fine. You know, I think for that cost, you're fine. But $850 for the body only, no EVF, very limited 14 frame per second or 30 frame per second buffering at 18 megapixels. It just feels like there's too many corners cut and you'd be tripping over yourself a lot. So for that reason, it doesn't earn my endorsement. If you're an M6 Mark II owner and you're happy with it, awesome. I'm just trying to give a preview for those who are looking at the camera, might be on the fence. I just think there are better options available. So those are my thoughts. You're welcome to disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.